Help support Name Explain by liking this video, leaving a comment and subscribing to the channel. Every now and then I remember that I make this vaguely successful series of videos here on the channel all about the remains of famous last names. Like genuinely, the reason I make them so far and few between is because they're so different to the rest of my videos, I kind of forget I make them. So I thought I ought to make another one in my What Remains of Famous Last Names series. And for this installment we are looking into the surname of the person I've probably talked about most on this channel, Christopher Columbus. Long-time viewers of Name Explain will know that Columbus has popped up many times in these videos, and that's not because I'm a particularly big fan of his. It's just that in the Americas so much was named by him, and in turn so much is named after him. Columbus named the countries of Costa Rica, Dominica and St. Lucia, just to name a few, and the nation of Columbia and the city of Columbus in Ohio are named after him, just to name a few examples. Seriously, it's quite impressive to see the impact that this guy's had on the names on our planet. However, should it stay this way? In more recent times, a new light has been shone on the man. Initially he was regarded as this great hero who founded the Americas. There was more research has been done on him, his errors and the darker side of his life have been brought to light. People don't hold Columbus in the same light as they did years ago. In fact, some places were removing statues of him, and places named after him are starting to change their name. The aforementioned Columbus, Ohio may even change its name. There's even a petition to rename it Flavortown in honor of Columbus native Guy Fieri. I couldn't not mention this part of his story, but it's not going to be the main point of today's video. Though the removal of his name from places and the names of others is something I seriously want to talk about in a future video. In today's video, we're here to look into the life of Christopher Columbus and see if anyone related to him still bears that name. Though where does this name come from? This name comes from the Latin word for doves, columba, and it's thought that this name would be one of religious origins, as doves and Christianity are very much linked together. However, while many of us know this man as Christopher Columbus, this wasn't actually his name. Well, it sort of was and wasn't. I doubt he nor anyone around him would have called him this, as Christopher Columbus is the English translation of his name. His name is actually kind of confusing, as his origins are somewhat debated and he moved around across different nations in his youth. Different translations of his names are used across his life. He is popularly believed to be from somewhere that is now part of Italy, and in Italian his name is Cristoforo Colombo. However, he also spent a lot of his life in Portugal and Spain, where his name is translated into Cristavo Colombo and Cristobal Colon in Portuguese and Spanish respectively. More on these names in due course. And like I said, there are still debates and theories as to where he was born, but most popularly his birth is seen as being in 1451 in the Republic of Genoa, which as mentioned is now a part of Italy, and of course he would have gone under the Italian translation of his name, Cristoforo Colombo. He was the eldest son of Domenico Colombo and Susanna Fontanello Lussa. Together, including Christopher, they had 5 children: Christopher, Giovanni, Bartholomew, Bianchinetta and Giacomo. His father was a simple wool weaver, so he didn't come from a wealthy or privileged background, meaning he had very little education. However, he had aspirations to be on the open sea from a young age. He supported himself by selling sea maps and charts, eventually working on ships in his teenage years. His earliest voyages took him to the Mediterranean and the Aegean Sea. In one journey he landed on the Greek island of Chios, which coincidentally is the closest he would ever get to actual Asia in his life, though he would beg to differ. In his 20s he moved to Portugal, hence why we have the Portuguese translation of his name. He settled here for some time, though eventually he called Spain his home and became a citizen of that nation. It was from here on out that he went under the Spanish translation of his name, Cristobal Colon. We aren't sure exactly why he used this Spanish variation, but it's most likely simply to fit in with his new home nation. If Columbus didn't move to Spain, then it could be argued that things in our world would be very different. Most noticeably, so much of modern South America probably wouldn't be speaking Spanish. His first voyage in the Atlantic was in 1476. However, it wasn't the most successful of adventures, as the commercial fleet he was sailing was attacked by French privateers off the coast of Portugal. His ship was burnt down and sunk, leaving the young Columbus to have to swim to the shores of Portugal to save his own life. So while Columbus and the Atlantic didn't get off to the best start, he became much more well acquainted with the sea and studied it and its currents. It was around this time that more and more people started to talk about the far-off riches that lay untouched in Asia. Europe knew of the precious spices and metals that were in the land that could make a fortune for them all. However, there was an issue with retrieving it all. Non-European domination of the Middle East made reaching Asia a difficult challenge. Though this challenge did not stop Columbus by any means, he came up with a theory. Instead of traversing the difficult Middle East, why not sail west across the Atlantic and reach Asia from the other side? Columbus estimated that the distance between the Canary Islands and Japan was just 2,300 miles, so the journey was feasible. However, his theory came with counter-arguments. Many others of his time time disagreed with this length of 2,300 miles between the Canary Islands and Japan, figuring it out to be way longer, which is of course correct. However, while many disagreed with the length, most seemed to be in agreement that it was just empty water between the Canary Islands and Japan, so many believed you could sail from one to the other, it would just have been way longer than Columbus estimated. Nevertheless, he devised a plan to sail 3 ships across the Atlantic to find a shorter, faster route to Asia, a route in which they wouldn't have to face the challenges of the Middle East. It all sounded too good to be true, and many were not falling for his idea. He asked for funding for his trip from the rulers of Portugal, Genoa and Venice, all of which rejected to fund his expedition. In 1486, he eventually got to be in court with the Spanish monarchy of the time, Queen Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand II of Aragon, and surprise surprise, they refused to fund him too, as they were more occupied with wars they were fighting at that time. However, Columbus persisted to ask them to fund the journey, and by 1492, when their wars were won, the Spanish finally agreed to finance this expedition. And it was in this same year of 1942 that Columbus left Spain to discover his faster route to Asia. As he wished, he got 3 ships. The ship he was in was the Santa Maria, and it was joined by the Pinta and the Nina. They were at sea for just 36 days when land was sighted. They docked here, and behold, Columbus had found Asia. Except it wasn't Asia, but one of the islands of the modern Bahamas. Nevertheless, Columbus and his men believed they were in Asia and started to trade with the natives of the island. They traded things like weapons, animals, and of course, gold, eventually setting up settlements there too. During his first expedition, he explored the islands of Cuba and Hispaniola too, the latter of which he thought might be Japan. By 1493, satisfied with his findings, he left 39 men there to occupy their settlement, and he set sail back to Spain. Back in Spain, Columbus shared his findings and explained how he had found a new route to Asia. Of course, his explanation was somewhat exaggerated. Nevertheless, the Spanish monarchy were happy with his findings, and they promised him rewards if he had found anything. This included being given the rank of Admiral of the Ocean Sea, being made Viceroy and Governor of all the land he found, 10% of all revenue produced by these lands, and the chance to purchase 1/8 of industry set up in the land. It's safe to say Columbus made a pretty penny from all this. However, he was far from done. Columbus would take 3 more expeditions to his Asia, and while in the first he was somewhat friendly with the natives, things took a darker turn. His second expedition was in 1493 and took him to Dominica, Puerto Rico, Cuba once again, and Jamaica. He found the people he left there last time dead, and enraged enslaved the natives to work for him to find gold, which proved somewhat fruitless. He also shipped many natives back to Spain to be sold into slavery, which started the slave trade in the Spanish Empire. His third voyage was from 1498 to 1500, and saw him explore the islands of Trinidad and finally make it to mainland modern South America, present-day Venezuela to be exact. The settlers he had left there on his second voyage were angry at him that there wasn't as much gold as he said there was, and of course the natives were angry at him too for enslaving them. This all led to his arrest and being sent back to Spain in 1500, being held in jail for 6 weeks. On his fourth and final voyage in 1502, Columbus primarily explored modern Central America. However, he and his men became stranded on Jamaica for a year, as the people of Hispaniola would not help him. He eventually, however, was saved by the Spanish and returned to Europe in 1504. By now, it seems the popular opinion of the man had turned south. The settlers he took to his discovered lands were unhappy about being lied to about the riches there, which in turn angered the Spanish Empire as a whole. And of course, the natives were unhappy with him due to forcing them into slavery. All this led to Christopher Columbus losing his titles and much of his riches, eventually dying just 2 years later in 1506 of arthritis following an infection. By his death, he still firmly believed that he had found the shorter route to Asia and not the New World as it would later be dubbed. Despite this, however, the impact he made on the world ultimately shaped our planet into what it is today, for better and for worse. And that's just a brief history of Columbus's career. Though what about his personal life? Columbus was married to a lady by the name of Filipa Pelas Trillo. They met and married during the time Columbus lived in Portugal. They were married in 1479 and had their first son together this year, or in 1480. Their son was called Diego Columbus. Unfortunately, however, Filipa died shortly after this in 1480, which may have spurred Christopher's decision to move to Spain. It seems that Diego went to Spain with his father, and like his dad, changed his surname to be Spanish too, becoming Diego Colon. It was in Spain he met Beatriz Encluez de Alana. While they never married, they stayed together for his life, and they eventually had a son too, Fernando Columbus, who was born in 1488 in Spain. This gives us 2 sons, and as with these 2, I want to talk about his younger son first, Ferdinand. This is because from what I could tell, Ferdinand didn't have any children, and it seems that due to being born out of wedlock, he wasn't seen as a rightful heir of Christopher. Nevertheless, that doesn't mean he did nothing with his life. It seems Ferdinand devoted his life to the written word, cultivating a huge library of books, printing music, and even printed pictures. Perhaps most importantly, Apparently, however, he wrote his father's biography, which is the main source of what we know about the explorer. He eventually died, however, in 1539. Christopher's eldest son and true heir Diego, however, gives us more hope in carrying on his father's name. In his youth, he and his half-brother were made pages in the Spanish court while their father was away. After his father's death, however, Diego spent much of his life in legal battles, trying to regain many of his father's lost privileges in the new world for himself. As Christopher's true heir, Diego believed that he should have the honours that his father had, such as 10% of the riches made by the land he discovered, and the titles his father was given for finding this land. This legal dispute between the Spanish monarchy and the descendants of Columbus seems to have come to a head in 1537, when King Charles I of Spain created the Duchy of Veragua, an area of land in Central America that was bestowed upon the descendants of Columbus as something of an honorary makegood. And from here, there's been a Duke or Duchess of Veragua who is a descendant of Christopher Columbus, the first of these being Luis Colon, Diego's son and Christopher's grandson. Luis was born in Santo Domingo in the modern nation of the Dominican Republic, and as Spanish had become the main language there, the name was cemented in its Spanish spelling of Colon, and it seems that Colon has been the favoured spelling of the name throughout the years. Since Christopher's grandson of Luis becoming the first Duke of Veragua, there have been 17 more, with the 18th Duke of Veragua being Cristobal Colon, who took the title in 1986 and is still alive to this day. And yes, if we translate his name into English, it becomes Christopher Columbus. So not only do we have a living ancestor who still carries that surname, but he even has the same first name as the one who made it famous. So from my calculations, and correct me if I'm wrong, this Christopher Columbus is the great grandson of the original Christopher Columbus. That's 16 greats if you weren't keeping track. This Christopher Columbus has talked about his name and his title and the attention they attract. He has said, if I'm not in a hurry, when I'm asked about my names, I usually explain who I am, and that his titles by now are mainly honorific, though he has said that he enjoyed sailing from a young age, much like his forebearer before him. This Christopher has of course talked about the actions of the original Christopher and his complicated relationship with the Americas. He has said how his ancestor is often blamed for all the bad things that happen in certain countries, and that Columbus was an explorer, nothing more. And on being asked about the negatives of Columbus's voyages, he stated that not all of those who went to America were Spain's finest. They had their fair share of greed and desire to get rich. So on the whole, he seems to defend his great times 16 grandfather's actions. He has even visited the Americas on multiple occasions, and on some of those occasions he was met with joy and sometimes met with disgust, all because of his name and the association it has with his polarizing ancestor. Thank you to all my patrons who support Name Explain on a monthly basis. Patreon is vital to Name Explain, and donating just $2 a month allows you to enjoy ad-free videos and bonus Patreon exclusive content. It also allows you to help choose what names get explained in upcoming videos and gets your name here with all these awesome people. Thank you so much for all the support you guys give Name Explain. Hello all, and thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. Check out another video and subscribe to stay in the loop on all things Name Explain. You can follow me on Twitter where I'm at NameExplainYT. On Instagram I'm also NameExplainYT, and on Facebook just search Name Explain. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again thank you all so much.